Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my channel. Really appreciate it. Please click to subscribe. I wasn't planning on doing an episode today. I'm actually on the move, going to Idaho for something else that I'm working on. But I was really struck by this story about the Mormons who are raising money for the family of the suspect who shot up the Mormon church and set it on fire. I just thought, never really heard of anything like that. And it reminded me of sort of some of what I saw when I was in Utah for the Charlie Kirk assassination. So I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that, also give you guys an update on the situation in Michigan with the awful church shooting and arson. So I'm going to get into it on this edition of Brian Ensign Investigates. So I really was struck by this story in Michigan. Mormons raising $300,000, the number is probably more now, for the family of the suspect, Jacob Sanford, who shot up the Mormon church and set it on fire. You remember how awful that story was. I covered it. Basically, he drove into the church with his truck, started shooting, killed members of the congregation, and then literally put gasoline everywhere and set the whole church on fire. And what's interesting now is you have Mormons who have started this online campaign to raise money for his family. The members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints started fundraisers really for people and families affected by the shooting at the Mormon church. But then there is one fundraiser in particular that has raised the $300,000 for the family of the suspect. And the One Send Go page reads, one of the families that suffered a terrible loss on that day was the family of Thomas Jacob Sanford, the shooter. Sanford leaves behind a wife and children who must be grieving. They will face financial hardship and psychological trauma as a result of this week's horrifying events. And it was formed by David Butler, a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's who formed the fundraiser. Goes on to say, on top of that, one of Sanford's sons deals with serious medical challenges that requires ongoing care, treatment, and specialized support. In the past, the family attempted to raise funds for him, but with limited success. And it goes on to say, I'm an ordinary member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm a fantasy and science fiction writer, and if you know me at all, it's probably because you've seen me on an LDS YouTube channel such as Stick of Joseph or Ward Radio. So he started the fundraising page, and I think I was struck by this because I just did an episode on the suspect, trying to dive into who he is. And I interviewed a city council member, someone who's running for city council, who had a long conversation with the suspect who did this at the church less than a week before the shooting and fire. And this man told this guy running for city council that he thought Mormons were the Antichrist. So just when you think about that compared to the love in the heart of these Mormons now trying to raise money for his family, I just found it to be really sort of an interesting situation. I'm going to get to a Mormon friend of mine in a second who I'm going to interview and get his take on a lot of this. But first I want to play for you again the man I interviewed who had the conversation with the suspect, just so you can get an idea of just the hatred this man had for Mormons.
But he said, they wanted me to remove my tattoos for sealment, which I know is a practice within the LDS church. And ultimately, then he continued to talk about how the Mormon Bible has additional books that are not in, I would say, denominational Christianity. And he did not like that. I just don't think I had the answers that he wanted to hear. And his final question or statement to me was, he said, Mormons are the Antichrist. He didn't yell it. He was not agitated.
So to be totally honest, I don't know a ton about Mormonism. I don't even know if Mormonism is really a word, but Mormons. I obviously have a lot of respect for them. I have respect for everyone pretty much, but just where I grew up in South Florida, I didn't really have a lot of Mormons in my school. And I did have a Mormon boss years ago, but I don't know a ton about the religion. When I was in Utah covering the Charlie Kirk assassination, I met a ton of Mormons because that's a very Mormon area, and a lot of the people who were at the Charlie Kirk event were Mormon. And what I found interesting there too, just in the spirit of forgiveness and just love, I guess, is almost immediately they were concerned about the suspect's family in Utah who was accused of killing Charlie Kirk. And other shootings that I've covered, almost all of them, mass shootings, people kind of go after the families right away. And I noticed a stark difference in Utah that they were not doing that, that they were immediately concerned about the suspect's family, which kind of reminded me of the situation in Michigan now, where you've got a Mormon raising money for the suspect's family there. So I'm joined now by Elliot Thorne. I met Elliot in Utah when I was covering the Charlie Kirk assassination, and I remembered you. I thought of you today, Elliot, because you said to me then, it was the day after the assassination, and you had been there with your family, that you were already thinking of. It wasn't the day; it was a few days after that you were thinking of the suspect's family there, and you were praying for them because they were Mormon. And it really struck me. And then there was this news now of the Mormons in Michigan raising money for the family of the suspect there, the man who literally
Yeah.
shot up their church, burned down their church, said Mormons were the Antichrist. And now they've raised like $250,000 for that man's family. And it just reminded me of our conversation back in Utah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if the, so the basis of, I guess, our conversation that you and I, are going to, kind of engage in is, the fundamental foundation of kind of what we represent for our church. Obviously, family is probably the most important dynamic of our foundation of what our gospel principles, are placed on. And, not only the inner family inside of our own homes, but the family of our community. And for me, I want to make it very clear that from my understanding, that the church is not sponsoring this solely as far as, the donations are going with the fundraiser. This was started by a man named David here in Utah, has no ties to Michigan whatsoever. And that speaks volumes to me. For what he was talking about, everybody was, speaking of course, the tragedy. I just want to say to my fellow brothers and sisters in Michigan, I love you guys. I'm super sorry with what's gone on there. My family's been praying again. The fact that I'm even having another conversation with you, Brian, about some mass tragedies, and we're talking about victims and their families and wives. The biggest thing that I was talking about with when that all went down, as far as like the family go, his family is victims also. I mean, they just lost a husband and a father. His wife just lost her husband and their son. And, that's a tragedy in itself. And so I think what David was trying to accomplish, and he is accomplishing, is exactly the principle of kind of what Donald Trump was talking about when faith weakens in our country, or when faith weakens, our country weakens. When faith is strong, our country's strong and it's sustainable and it flourishes. And I loved that quote because that is exactly the message that I believe that our church represents and people and members of our church. And honestly, any faith. I mean, I have conversations with people of multiple faiths. You're not wrong to be Jewish. You're not wrong to be Christian. You're not wrong to be Catholic. You're not wrong to be Mormon. These are people that are genuinely believe in their faith. And that's great. It's a fundamental foundation to have in principle with your families involved. Now, what David, I believe, was doing was sending a clear message, and that's something that has not been talked about over mainstream media lately, which has been let's find common ground with one another and find peace and love and compassion. And so by people donating to the families of the victims, for him to step back and I feel like he was had a he was inspired basically to think about their family, kind of like we talked about. And you know, the proof's in the pudding. For him to put that out there, and within a matter of minutes, they're at $7,000 in donations, and now they're up to almost $300,000, and it's coming from people that are not even Mormon. They're coming from people of all walks of life that are wanting to donate, and what better opportunity to bring people in to take a tragedy and turn it into something that's so powerful as a message that, hey, even through some of the worst experiences in our lives, that we can find a common ground with coming together to serve one another. And that's kind of, I think, the message that he was trying to portray.
Yeah, I think just what struck me, and unfortunately, I cover so many of these shootings,
Yeah.
sadly, just like kind of bouncing around the country. But, so many times, so quickly, almost every time, people quickly blame the suspect's family. And they start going
Yeah,
after the suspect's family. And sometimes that's warranted. Like there's been some cases where it's like, someone has mental illness and the parents still give them a gun, and it's like you can see why people are mad at the family. But a lot
for
of
sure.
times it's just they just, without really any evidence, go after the parents or the family members. And it just struck me that immediately in Utah, it kind of felt like the opposite happened after Charlie Kirk's assassination in terms of the suspect's immediate family. And then the same thing now with Michigan. Is that just is that a Mormon thing?
Well, I can't speak for other religions. I don't necessarily, I'm not a scholar, unfortunately, or somebody that's involved too much with that. But I can speak for my experience personally with our community. I've struggled many a times in my life. I am what you would consider a tattooed Mormon. I am covered in tattoos. I struggled with drinking and, living a life outside of the principles of the gospel. And I have had nothing but outpours of respect and love and compassion. And I think the biggest message that our church, does send out to the world is we want everybody to come in. If you smell like cigarette smokes, if you drink, if you struggle with mental health issues, if are somebody who has self-worth issues, whatever it is that you're going through in this life, our ward houses are available for people who are we call them hospitals for the sick, people that really genuinely are people that believe and are imperfect, which is everybody. But to go back to your point, our community inside of the church, we donate all over the world. We're always some of the first responders for natural disasters, for tragedies, for community outreach and help. It's a foundational principle that's been something that I love about our gospel. And I'm somebody that recently came back to our fold. I left for about 18 years because I just struggled deeply with connecting with the teachings and ideologies of the church because I just didn't understand them. And it was only until recently, as I got older, that I started studying myself and come to know the truth of how much I need faith in my home and with my family and God, and being a provider and protector. And so, to blame it on the family, um, that had nothing to do with it. That seems to be a natural reaction. I even was susceptible to that on social media when Charlie Kirk was assassinated. I actually got rid of my social media. I don't have it anymore. And because of the amount of influence that it was, engaging on me on an emotional and spiritual level. So yeah,
You mentioned the tattoos. I didn't, I guess I can't remember if I knew you had tattoos. I think maybe you had a long sleeve shirt on when I met you. But
I did.
but the suspect in the Michigan shooting had spoken about how he went to, and some of the details are murky, like, but that he went to Utah, I think, to meet with a
Yep.
girl, and he said something about tattoos. He had this real hatred for Mormons. He called them the Antichrist, but he brought up tattoos, that they wanted me to get rid of my tattoos or something like that. Is that, I don't know, is that a common theme in the Mormon? I don't know. Or do Mormons have an issue with tattoos? I don't even know.
You would be surprised all across the world and the country, how many individuals, in this life have experienced some sort or another of tattoos or, the stuff that I was speaking of earlier. And that's the testament to our faith is we welcome everybody. I personally, what we call our temple, I have an opportunity to go to our temple in December. I am covered in tattoos. Not once has anybody in our faith said, "You are not welcome here. We're not going to allow you to come into the temple. We're not going to take care of you based around you having tattoos." I'm a perfect example, if you want to talk about that, as far as what we do. Now, as far as, going to temple with my wife, currently that conversation did get brought up with him. I do know that he was talking about his relationship and how she was a devout Mormon and she was really strong in her faith, with wanting to have that experience with somebody, to be able to have that with him. And he just felt like he wasn't ready or anything on that and felt pressured. Um, Now, nobody's ever said anything in this religion like, "Hey, you can't." go to the temple, there is a waiting period sometimes, and that's situational, depending on, the discretion of our church leaders, and that's okay. That's where the process comes into place of trusting that and having faith in their leadership and guidance. But that's situational. Like I said, each person's different, each situation is different. It just depends on their inspiration that they have. So,
So again, I said this earlier in my episode, but just being totally honest, like I didn't really grow up. I grew up in South Florida. There really weren't a lot
yeah,
of Mormons like in my neighborhood. So I'm kind of naive to a lot of this. I had one Mormon boss at one point. So are you like, can you have tattoos? Like, are you cool with I mean, is that okay?
I love it. It's part of my story. When I sit down with people and I talk to them, what better way for me to just be my genuine, authentic self? And that's the thing that the church offers us is an opportunity to be our genuine, authentic self. I am a testament of that. I'm somebody that is strong in my faith and my belief now. I have, a strong relationship with Jesus Christ, and it's because of my story and my experiences I've gone through. I've never That's only a personal thing with the gentleman was experiencing. I went through that when I was in my 20s. I blamed the church, I blamed the people in the church, and honestly it came down to my own belief systems about myself. I felt unworthy, I felt unlovable, I felt like I didn't belong. It wasn't the church that was doing that to me. It was because of this narrative that I told in myself, because I was out drinking and I got tattoos and doing these things. And I'm not saying it's bad to drink and get tattoos or anything. To each its own, please, be your genuine authentic self. Inside of our church, though, and I'm not trying to speak, I want to be very clear. I'm not speaking for our church and our church doctrines and anything on that level, but I want to talk about my own personal experience with it. So, yeah, I'm a prime example. I'm a guy that is covered in tattoos, and I'm an active member of our LDS faith.
And what did he mean when he talked about sealment?
Well, we have something inside of our church that is very sacred to us. And, if you read the Book of Mormon or kind of go into our church's history and stuff, we believe that families can be together forever. And that's eternal. So, we don't believe just in mortal marriage. Mortal marriage and doctrine is great. That solidifies your commitment to each other here on this earth. But we genuinely believe that families have an opportunity to be together forever. And so being sealed is a great word for us to be able to utilize for us being together eternally. So even after this life, I get to be with my children and my wife, and it's a commitment that we'll make with each other after we die. So not just in sickness and in health, but in afterlife. So.
What was it like for you seeing what happened at the church in Michigan? Because I think for everybody watching it, it was so disturbing not only to hear about someone shooting in a church, but then to see the church literally burn down and the truck that drove into it. I mean, like all the imagery was just terrible. But I don't really remember something like that happening. I mean, I might just not know about it, but to a Mormon church like that before.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you look at the history of our church, I mean, I think the last or persecutions and fires and death and all that kind of stuff came, in the 1800s. And I have genuinely not heard of any real historical experiences that have, plagued our church, on a level that this has taken place, as far as burning down one of our churches and doing a mass shooting and killing some of our members, and again, this goes into play with I don't want to. I know this is a big topic with the Mormon Church right now, yet this is something that's plagued, many religions, Jewish synagogues and Catholic churches and, people of faith. The Muslims, have been persecuted in the past for, stuff that's happened, during 9/11 and stuff on that level. And people as a whole, I'm one of those people that don't just believe all people are bad. It's not a generalization that all people are bad, so to specifically target one religion is something that I wanted to touch on with you guys. But I have been absolutely devastated. My family's been devastated. Us as members have been devastated to see the horrible experiences. And you guys had touched base and sent me a text message, with an individual that was basically sharing my story of the truck came through the wall and I had to dive on my wife and kids. And, I was fearful for my life that I was going to get shot. I heard those same exact words and it actually brought me back to the Charlie Kirk thing. And I, on an empathetic level, really related to that person, for what he was experiencing as a dad and a father and the trauma. And so it's a lot more personal for me all the way here in Utah, than just some other shooting that just took place in the country.
Just sort of big picture, do you feel misunderstood? I mean, I know there's some reality shows. I haven't really seen very many of them, but I've just like seen them on TikTok. I think like Mormon Wives. Um, and then you see like things on social media about Mormons. Um, like how do you feel about that stuff? Do you feel like your community is misunderstood at all?
Well, first of all, I love it. I know that sounds weird to say, but I love it. You want to know why? Because people are talking about us. And I love that the conversation's being open and dialogue. They always say, any publicity is good publicity. Whatever's going to get people to, want to start asking questions and engage in dialogue and have conversations like we're doing right now. I think is very healthy and okay. Now, is it a direct representation and reflection of us as a community? Absolutely not. And that's okay. For me, we're kind of a faith-based people that kind of are okay with being who we are in silence. We have missionaries that go all over the world that teach our gospel, and we have our general conferences that happen twice a year. And other than that, we you kind of keep really as much as we possibly can to ourselves. We try to stay out of as much politics as we possibly can, and engaging in ads and TV space. We just don't do that kind of stuff. And so yeah.
Is there any in terms of the Michigan suspect? I mean, he was apparently in Utah at one time. Have you heard anything about him? Do you know where he was? Like, has word gotten around within the community at all? Did anyone know him?
Um, no, not really, not from what I've been able to experience. And trust me, this was one of those moments for me where I was like, holy cow, this actually went on. And I was like asking people and doing all this kind of stuff. And, come to find out, I believe that he was up in the area by Park City, Utah, where Sundance is, for the year that he was here for 2009, when he met, the young lady that he was dating. And from what I understand is exactly what you understand. I think that with this being an ongoing investigation, kind of like the church Charlie Kirk stuff and all the other investigations that are going on with a lot of the school shootings and things, more information is going to start to come out as they do more dig diving and investigating. But um, as far as I know, he had a bad experience with the church, as far as his direction that he was being pulled in here in Utah, to go with the woman that he was dating and stuff, and I think it put a bad taste in his mouth. Now, how that transformed into him doing a shooting and driving into a church in 15 years. There's a lot of rhetoric and things and materials that anybody can access online that it's a conditioning to your brain that the more time that you spend researching something, the more knowledgeable and invested you're going to get. And from what I understand, he had a lot of that going on with his readings and watchings and everything that just transformed. And I don't know necessarily what his motives are yet. I think that you guys too are seeing that they're still trying to find the motives for that.
And just my last question, Elliot, like how are
Yeah.
you doing in relation to what you witnessed being so close to Charlie Kirk being killed? Like, I think when I met you, it was still kind of fresh and like the media was there, and I don't know, now that you've had time, like are you doing okay?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. I went and got a firearm. I have one in a safe under my bed. I carry it with me now because Utah's open carry laws. I definitely, it rocked me on a level of being more prepared with my family, being more prepared inside of my home. And now at church. I mean, it's like you got it's not necessarily segregated to just one group. I'm tired of this narrative. I even got involved in it. There's a reason why I had to get off of social media. I fell into this trap of hate filled experiences with people where I wanted to debate and prove them wrong and talk about the left and wokeism and how the right and all this kind of stuff, and I wasn't open to allowing myself the right to be able to have love and compassion and healing, and I went to one of my church leaders here in Utah and confessed to him that I uh felt like I didn't have the spirit in my life anymore because I was filled with so much anger and hate because my sadness and grief turned into hate. And that allowed me to transition through the grieving process. So I went through the grieving process that I think anybody would in a traumatic situation where I finally am at a spot where I've accepted what has happened. Now I'm watching all these conspiracy theorists and just random stuff come on, and I'm like, man, I was literally there. It's a tragedy. But
So you
I
were that
feel
guy?
a lot better.
You were into the conspiracies at one point?
No, no, I'm watching that go down. I'm
Okay,
like, what the
okay.
heck? I'm there. Definitely not into the conspiracies. I was
Yeah.
there, and but the biggest thing that we were talking about earlier was, the social media platforms, man. I felt like I got so sucked in and glued to social media that at any moment, and then the algorithms, the moment that you even just engage in any type of conversation for the far right or far left, I mean, you're just bombarded with ads and things on your news feeds and everything that are just tailored specifically for what you're trying to do. So I had to pull it off of my face basically. And disable my Instagram, my Facebook, my TikToks, like everything that I had. And then honestly, that's helped me with my healing process. So any type of stuff that I want to research, I Google real quick just to kind of get involved a little bit more. But that's helped me with my healing process. So
Great. Well, I appreciate you, Elliot, for chatting with me again, giving me your
yeah,
perspective. Like you said, I think a lot of people are nervous to have conversations like when they don't, like I said, just some people are just nervous to have these open conversations. So from when I first met you, I could tell you were cool. So thank you.
yeah, you're cool, man. I am happy anytime you come back to Utah, man. Seriously, call me. We'll get some dinner. You're a good dude, and I just really appreciate the messages and the stuff and the investigations that you're doing. I always love watching you, and just much respect for you, buddy.
Thanks, buddy.